It is time. Ladies and gentlemen, let us continue with the second part of the opening ceremony. Here we have a number of keynote addresses. I would like to start with Mark Dieriks, the Director General for Energy, Telecom and Competition of the Ministry of Economic Affairs of the Netherlands. His talk is entitled, A Policy Vision on Future Power Systems. Mr. Dieriks, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this conference in Eindhoven. And at the same time, of course, with a feeling of, let's call it sadness, because of the unexpected passing away of Will Kling, who invited me a year ago to come and to give a speech to you. Will was not only appreciated as an intelligent and sympathetic friend, but also because of his contribution in the field of power systems. And this field consists, as you all know, of different worlds. One of the qualities of Will was that he felt himself home in not only the scientific world, but also in the world of energy companies, and at the same time in the curious world of government policy, where I belong to. He did not only understand the scene and the practice of networks, but also the art of networking with everybody he met, also in the policy-making divisions of the ministries in The Hague. Will made the connections. And so for me, it really is an honor and a pleasure to be here and to speak to you as a representative of the world of the policymakers, and by doing so, contribute in making the connections of Will. Ladies and gentlemen, I will give you a view on the main challenges for future power systems seen from the perspective of a policymaker. A policymaker who has to act as a translator between the politics and society on the one hand, and the business of power systems on the other hand. At first, I will draw you 5 mega trends that can be seen as the cause of these challenges. And I will end my speech with some remarks concerning policy and practice in order to give you a little bit of a feel of the world where I too belong, in The Hague. Let me try, yes. I show you the first megatrend, which cannot be a surprise to you. The climate challenge is clear. And we know that the human need for energy is the main contribuent through the emissions of carbon dioxide, CO2. World leaders are outspoken in a 2-degree scenario. And to realize this scenario is difficult enough to the Western world. The Western countries are responsible for using up the largest part of the world carbon budget in the last 2 centuries. But as you can see on this sheet, the non-OECD countries are speeding up emissions very quickly. The remaining carbon budget for the 2-degree scenario is very, very small. The good news, as you can see on this slide, the good news is that we have the technology to realize the energy transition. With energy efficiency measures, with renewables, with carbon capture and storage, large emission reductions are possible. And there's more good news. Macroeconomists tell us that from their point of view, it's beneficial to save the climate and to realize the transition. It's economically feasible. For policymakers, this of course leaves us with the challenge how to realize these investments. And it leaves us with, to put it mildly, some dilemmas. But also in this sheet you can see nuclear could be one piece of the puzzle. The second megatrend is the change in the distribution of welfare. Non-OECD countries account for a rising share of emissions because of this trend. gaps between nations are closing, although gaps within nations can widen. Reports from the IMF and the OECD are warning for this development. The unequal division of welfare is threatening societal development. The consequence of the growth and the spreading of welfare is nonetheless a growth of energy consumption in the non-OECD countries. A growth of fossil fuels is expected in all these scenarios. This means an upward pressure on energy use, and by that, to carbon dioxide emissions. So the challenge is not only to decouple economic development from energy use, say fossil energy use, but the challenge is also to leapfrog economic acceleration and on the same time moving back from ecological thresholds. And this means there is a vast need for creativity, for innovation, and for change. As you can see here, the non-OECD leapfrogs OECD with relation to renewable power additions. Compared with the OECD, the rise of renewables is huge. However, 2020 will face a huge stock of newly built conventional. And that has the risk of, let's say, an OECD-styled lock-in development in non-OECD countries. What you would wish is a one-go jump in the non-OECD countries to a smart, decentral, and renewable energy system. And this leads me to the third megatrend. Currently, 50% of the world population lives in cities, and this may rise to 75% in the coming decades. The trek to the cities gives us both challenges and opportunities, as always. Although many people believe this to be a good thing. On the one hand, you see that cities dominate the energy use, from 65% nowadays to 75% in 2030, and then rising to 80% and beyond. What you also see is that many cities take a lead in energy and climate policies, often driven by immediate pollution concerns. And another opportunity is that urbanization offers a vast potential for clean energy solutions. And I mentioned some: radical transport redesign, smart communities with smart energy solutions, high-efficient buildings, even up to energy-generating buildings, or extra space in the rural and, let's say, emptying hinterland for vast renewable energy generation projects. So cities will play a very, very important role in determining the energy system of the future. The fourth megatrend is, well, the logical next step, the acceleration of technology developments. Is this relevant for the energy business? I would say, you bet it is. Though the speed and the direction of innovations are always very hard to predict. I give you a summing up of some of the technologies that can change our world or are already doing so. For example, direct current power electronics and supergrids, extraction technologies for unconventional hydrocarbons, or let me mention the solar revolution. You know, the Swanson's law, the observation that the price of solar photovoltaic modules tends to drop by 20% for every 50% of increased cumulative shipped volume of photovoltaic modules. Or let's mention all kinds of new energy storage systems, or the Internet of Things, or local integration of smart networks. And this is only what comes up if you are asked to mention some of the new developments of which cities could benefit. Technology development is speeding up, and this will undoubtedly influence the future of the power systems. So the fifth megatrend I want to mention here has a lot to do with accelerating technology. but it goes even behind technology, and I mean connectivity of networking. Information is everywhere, always, immediate nowadays, and what we see is a move to the connected world of a new word, netizens. Netizens. And beyond that, a move towards the Internet of Things. And this trend changes the function of energy in the economy and the society. For instance, technologies like 3D printing has significant influence, of course, on location and transportation issues, with consequences for the use of energy. And the energy system will become smarter, more unified and integrated, and also fed by prosuming netizens. So, ladies and gentlemen, where do these 5 megatrends bring us in our search for future power systems? What challenges do these trends bring for the power system business? What we see in the Netherlands and also in other countries are the gigantic changes the power system is facing. We see a global growth in demand for energy, growth in the demand for electricity, and in particular growth in the production of renewable electricity instead of fossil. Technology development in electric vehicles and heat pumps will lead to extra demand for electricity. In a global perspective, renewable electricity is the sector where it happens. Some figures. For the next 15 years, 60% of capacity additions and 75% of the investment volume will be renewable. Midterm expectations for renewable energy and renewable power fractions vary quite a lot, but may reach about 30% for energy and nearly 50% for power in 2030. That's in 15 years from now on. And solar is accelerating. Small-scale solar goes through a revolution. It's now believed that 20% of all added power generation capacity in the next 15 years will be solar. 20% of all added power generation will be solar. And we also expect crossovers. There are more possibilities for the growth in renewable electricity than for renewable heating. So we expect power to heat, power to gas, power to fuels. And we expect a development towards more decentral energy systems. The title of my speech does not by accident mention power systems, plural, instead of the power system, singular. Power systems. We expect a growth in different systems with different crossovers. For energy companies, this means that sustainability will become their business model. Energy companies have to change themselves from energy company to, let's say, a sustainable energy service company. Business concepts has to be dematerialized. They will have to work with the concept of the circular economy, with closed material and closed waste loops. And we will see portfolio shifts, divesting from fossil-intensive activities to investing in clean activities. For energy companies, the motto will be think global, but also act local. And this means a focus on regionalization and localization of energy systems and economic concepts with dominance of services. We probably will see new answers for demands for mobility, for comfort, for care and convenience, with unclear perspectives for large economic sectors such as the energy sector, the automotive sector, or heavy industries and others. And another important message for the power business would be, don't miss the technology. The accelerating speed of innovation leads, in a way, to creative destruction. And companies that live off yesterday's technology will suffer a lot. The power business has to be ready for the connected world. A world of consumer intimacy, of complete transparency, of the Internet of Things, of prosumerism, and all the buzzwords of today. Policymakers, ladies and gentlemen, are facing the same sort of challenges as energy companies have. In the light of internationalization and decentralization of energy systems, one of the first questions to come up are which government will be responsible for energy policy? Will it be local? Will it be regional? Will it be national? Or will it be multinational? International cooperation between governments on the energy field is growing. But how do we see the pathway to, for instance, a European energy union, where every nation still wants to be responsible or the owner of its own energy mix? You are dealing, as a member state of the European Union, with your own energy mix and whatsoever. What could you do if you would change that concept in coming up with a union with 28 different energy mix policies? Another difficult question is how to deal with the changing energy market, with new roles and new parties on this market. And a third intriguing question is how the government can make optimal use of the energetic society where people are active in producing and saving their own energy. And here we see dilemmas. Policymakers are responsible for adequate regulation to facilitate the changes of the energy system. And at the same time, regulation is expected to give stability. So change and stability, that's not always a mix in a proper way. And what could be an appropriate answer? Well, I must be honest, I have to admit, I don't know the answer yet. But I show you what is urgently needed to be able to give the answers. And I call it with a modern world, I would say we need leadership. If you look to what's going to happen later this year, for example, in Paris, we have to come to a global agreement on climate changes and energy transition, like we did last year in Brussels at the European Council meeting on energy and climate, where the European members agreed on a number of targets for 2030. You are familiar with them, I hope. Minus 30% carbon dioxide in 2030 and a common European goal of 27% for renewable energy to be achieved in 2030. And all these agreements will be cornerstones for the national vision in the Netherlands on how to reach a sustainable energy system in 2050. A vision the Dutch government hopes to present at the end of this year, at the end of 2015. I come to an end, to a close of my speech. In the Netherlands, we have a tradition which we call poldering, a genuine English word, poldering, in order to get commitment for all the involved stakeholders. This is a time-consuming way, we all know, of decision-making, but once the decision has been made, all are on board in implementing the decisions. It's a Dutch way of showing leadership, to do it together, to decide together, and then to implement the decisions together. And in 2013, 2 years ago, we came in the Netherlands poldering our way to a national energy agreement with almost 50 parties agreeing on, for instance, how to reach the 14% renewable energy, how to come to 1.5% energy savings, and industry, energy sector, governments, and environmental parties are all part of this agreement. And I come back to Will Kling. In the Netherlands, we have in our innovation policy also a policy that is built on the cooperation between the scientific world, the business world, and the policy world. And together, these three parties give focus on the R&D policy in the Netherlands and create networks between these three worlds. And Will played an important role in the top sector energy, and especially within the smart grid theme, one of the more important themes in the future of our power systems. Smart grids is all about networking. And like Will Kling was a master in this field, we all together must become masters in networking like he was. So let's connect ourselves. Thank you very much for your attention.